Most founders think that scaling to 7 figures is about working harder, longer hours, more sales, or more ads. Well, what if I told you the harder you work, the slower you actually grow? When I was building my first company, I made that exact mistake. I thought that if I pushed harder, then naturally I'm going to break through over time. But adopting that approach, all it did was burn me out, until I realized that I wasn't actually managing the business. I was just reacting to the chaos around me. You see, most business owners, they measure the wrong things. They obsess over things like revenue and clients, but those are just outcomes. The real growth comes from knowing the drivers behind those numbers and the KPIs that actually move the needle. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 10 KPIs that helped me scale my business to 1 million in revenue and eventually exit for over $6 million. And by the end of this video, you're going to know what numbers to track to predictably grow your business without burning out or guessing. Because the truth is, you can't scale what you can't see. And once you understand your numbers, you then stop gambling with growth and you start engineering your freedom. Because a few years before I actually exited my company for a life-changing amount, if I'm being totally honest, my business was in a complete mess. I was working 16-hour days. I was running myself ragged. And no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to scale beyond 650K in revenue. And at this time, I was trying absolutely everything. I spent more on ads. I invested in SEO, search engine optimization. I did direct outreach on LinkedIn, but most of it fell flat. I was doing the right things, but I was doing them in the wrong way because I had a fundamental flaw. I didn't understand KPIs. I wasn't interrogating the data. I wasn't asking why things weren't working. So what I did was keep on repeating the same mistakes time and time again, but only faster. But once I began to understand and read KPIs correctly, that's when everything changed. And it became the blueprint that took me from burnout and chaos to scaling beyond 1 million in revenue predictably and then exiting for over $6 million, which once upon a time would have seemed impossible and would have been just a dream. So let me break this down properly and share with you the 10 KPIs that took me to 1 million and beyond. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, most founders, it's not really a scaling problem that they have. It's more of a visibility problem. Yeah. And it's not visibility around their business, not the marketing, but it's more about the numbers. They're trying to grow a business that they can't see. So what they're doing are tracking outcomes like revenue, but not the drivers that actually create those outcomes. And until you understand those drivers, you're always going to be guessing. Now, within this framework, we have two types of KPIs. We have the marketing and sales KPIs, which we refer to as the growth engine. This is going to help you to increase and boost revenue and profitability. But then we also have the retention and financial KPIs. So this is the sustainability engine, because there's no point scaling your company if you have issues operationally, because what's going to happen is that scale is going to scale your issues and the cracks within your business, which inevitably will break if you apply more pressure. That's not where we want to be. So let's start with part one, which is your marketing and sales KPIs. So let's start where scale begins, and that's with your marketing and sales metrics. Because if you can't measure how your new business comes in, then you're never going to be able to scale beyond your own effort. So the first KPI that you need to be embedding within your KPI dashboard is your CTR, which is your click-through rate. So your CTR is going to tell you how strong your message is grabbing the attention of your target market. So when you're running an ad campaign, whether that be static or say a video creative, your CTR is going to be the indicator that's going to tell you how well your message is resonating with your target market. So the higher the CTR, the more aligned your messaging is with your target audience. You're going to be grabbing their attention. They're going to be curious about your offering. The ads are working well. But if you have a low CTR, then that means it's falling short, it's failing. And so it's likely that you're going to have to go back to work, reproduce more ad creatives, and again, test those. Now, you might throw out maybe 10, 15 different ad creatives and different copy, and only one or two of those show high CTR rates. So that would indicate that these are the ads that you need to double down on, look to optimize, and then go again, testing various different versions of that particular ad creative. So every time you're running ad campaigns, you need to be using different variations of the same ad, using different headlines, using different hooks, and maybe different copy. And each of those are going to move the needle for the better or for worse. And your CTR is going to give you the indication of what's performing well and what isn't. Then you have your CPO, which is your cost per lead. So when someone clicks on your ad, it's going to tell you how much it costs to get their details. So it's not just about clicking on the ad. So I need to correct that. It's about them making a commitment, either by completing an application, or it might just be submitting their details, or it could be coming all the way through to actually jumping on a call. Now, every time you do that, it's going to cost you a certain amount in ad spend. So this would be the cost per lead. Every time you have a lead's details, how much did it cost you to acquire those details? So as a founder, you really need to know your numbers when it comes to your cost per lead. Because if you have a service where you charge £1,000 to your client, but yet it costs you £900 to acquire a new lead, that would indicate that something's broken. So it's either one of two things. You might have to push up your prices, or something in the funnel needs fixing, needs to be optimized. Maybe it's your ad creatives and your CTR rate is too low. So this would help you to identify where the problem lies so that you can then correct it and then bring people in or pay less for your leads. So next you have your landing page conversion rate. So if you're running an ad campaign and someone's clicked on your ad, do they then take action? So if they click on your ad, then they land on a landing page that you have. If your conversion rate, let's just say, is under 5%, then something needs to be corrected. It's either your messaging is wrong or your offers misaligned to your market. So what you then need to start doing is a level of rectification where you're either tweaking your copy, maybe you're simplifying your call to action, or maybe you need to strengthen your social proof, maybe your testimonials, etc. So you need to be looking at set a target of a conversion rate of about 10% for your landing page. Now, some of you watching this, you probably don't even have a landing page in place and all your leads are coming to your website. If that is the case, then that's a fatal flaw and probably one of the reasons why you're failing to scale your business. However, that's a topic that's probably worthy of its own video and not something we're going to be touching upon here. But if you do have a landing page, your conversion rate should be around about, you should be aiming for at least 10% or thereabouts. Next, we have book calls. So this is where interest becomes opportunity and identifies how well you're able to convert leads and get them onto a call with you, or get them to take the commitment of scheduling and booking in a call. So it's going to show you how effective you are at converting traffic into conversations. And obviously in those conversations is where you're going to have the opportunity to convert people into actual sales. So if your book calls are low, then that might identify that you're either not creating enough urgency, or your setup process needs improving, or you're not providing clarity about what the next step is and what it involves and the benefit it has to the lead or the prospect. Number 5 is show up rate. So of those leads who actually book a call, how many of them actually showed up to the call? Now, a low show up rate isn't a marketing issue. It's a communication issue. So what you need to be doing is sending reminders, using MSN, WhatsApp, email confirmation, or actually have a setup in place that's calling them ahead of the book call in order to ensure that they turn up and show up. Because what you need to understand is leads that don't show are costing you double, once in time and again in lost opportunity, and you don't want to be making that mistake. The next KPI that you need to be embedding within your business is your average transaction value. Now, your ATV shows how much the average client spends per transaction. And just a little thing of increasing this by 10% can grow your business without you needing more leads. It can boost your profitability without boosting your expenditure and your outgoings. That's a potential way you can scale revenue without scaling stress. But really what that average transaction value is there for, to help those who who have maybe multiple services understand on average how much each client spends. And then when you're starting to figure out your forecasting and setting your targets for the week, month, or year, you're basing it upon the average transaction value. So you know how many transactions that you need to get in order to hit your KPIs and hit your revenue targets. And number 7, and this is a very important one, and this is your ROAS. And your ROAS, essentially, is your marketing scoreboard. It's going to tell you exactly how much revenue you generate for every pound you spend. And once you begin to embed the KPIs that I've just shared with you within your business, within your dashboard, what you'll then be able to calculate is by spending £1,000 in ad spend, you know exactly how much revenue you're going to generate, give or take a few pounds, with the money that you invested. So if you invested £1,000 and your ROAS is 4x, you know that you're going to get £4,000 back for every £1,000 you spend. And that is when scaling becomes a science. But you will never be able to determine what your ROAS is without first putting these KPIs in place, understanding them, managing them, and acting upon them. So the second part of this framework are the retention and financial KPIs. And it's what we're going to refer to as the sustainability engine. Because marketing is only half of the equation. Because if you can't keep your clients or your operations aren't intact, then you're never going to be able to scale because you're going to have a leaky bucket. And so you have to ensure you have the correct KPIs and the correct management metrics in place to identify if there's any leaks in your bucket before you start pouring more water in. So scaling isn't just about adding more, it's about plugging in the leaks. So here we've got 3 KPIs that you immediately need to begin embedding within your dashboard. So the first one is customer satisfaction. Are your clients genuinely happy? Would they recommend you to others? You need to set a target and then track it consistently. Anyone who does business with you, you need to be sending out to them a customer survey in order to get that feedback loop, knowing how well, what you need to improve on, what you're failing on, where you're dropping the ball, so you can take action accordingly and ensure that whatever you're putting out is the best it could possibly be. That's key. Remember, what gets measured gets managed, and a happy client is always a walking testimonial. So if they're happy, they're going to tell more people. They're going to tell their peers. They're going to tell their friends, and they're going to refer new business back to you that's going to help you bring in new leads, new business, more revenue, more profits. Then you have your client churn rate. And this is something that a lot of people neglect. And it's identifying the percentage of clients that you lose. And I know it could be painful. I know sometimes you don't want to be reminded about where you dropped the ball. But the only way you will stop that from happening in the future is facing that harsh reality and put the necessary measures in place to rectify the issues that you might have within your business. And this is definitely the silent killer of growth. Again, you can't fill a leaky bucket. So retention has to be in place before you begin to pour more leads in. Okay? Then number 10, your EBITDA. And this was the game changer for me. And the EBITDA is the true profit, and it's the ultimate performance metric. And I'll tell you why. Because when I started tracking my EBITDA, that's when everything shifted. Because I shifted my perspective from working on my business from a day to day to a point where I was building my business to sell. And when you adopt the approach of building your business to sell, that's when you begin building a company that truly runs without you. I knew that if I wanted to exit my business for 6 million, then I needed to know exactly what my EBITDA target was. Because whenever you're selling a business, that's the metric that companies use for the evaluation. Your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Okay, so this was the big game changer for me, and I'm going to be doing a separate video on this entirely because this is the truth. So there's a difference between self-employed and being scalable, and when you begin to embed your EBITDA and use it as your weekly, daily, monthly metrics, then that's when shit gets real. So when you master these 10 KPIs, you're no longer just managing a business, you're engineering one. Because scale isn't about working harder. It's about knowing deeper, knowing the numbers, knowing your business, knowing what drives it and what holds it back. And until you change your mindset and then start adopting this way of working, you're always going to be held back. You're always going to be stuck. And that's not what I want for you. So make sure you start incorporating some of these KPIs, if you're not already doing so, within your way of working, within your working practice, so you can shift from being overwhelmed, overworked, working long hours, to a place of scaling, a place of freedom, a place of more profits. Here's the truth that most people never tell you. Every level of growth demands a new version of you. Your current knowledge set got you to where you are today, but your next level requires more insight, more control, more clarity. Jim Rohn once said, your income will never exceed your level of personal development. And when I finally understood that, that's when everything changed in business and in life. Because KPIs don't just help you scale your business, they help to give you freedom back. Freedom to be able to make decisions without stress. Freedom to build with confidence. Freedom to live life on your own terms. And I think that's something that we all want, right? So if you're serious about hitting 7 figures and breaking through the 1 million mark, then you need to stop focusing on doing more, guys. And instead start using the KPIs that I've shared with you in this video. Because remember, what gets measured and what gets managed begins to scale. See you in the next video.